I never expected the truth to come from her. Not from my husband. Not from one of our friends. Not even from the people who had watched my marriage slowly fall apart without saying a word. It came from her. The woman I had spent years trying to avoid. The woman I believed was the reason my husband had changed. The woman I blamed for every sleepless night, every unanswered question, and every tear I cried in silence. Her name was Vanessa. And on the day she walked into my life again, everything I thought I knew shattered. For 10 years, I believed I had a strong marriage. My husband, Ethan, wasn't perfect. Neither was I. But we had built a life together. A beautiful home. Shared dreams. Countless memories. At least that's what I thought. Then little things started changing. He became distant. His phone was always face down. Late-night work meetings suddenly became normal. And every time I asked if something was wrong, he smiled and said the same thing. "You're overthinking again." Maybe I was. Maybe I wanted to believe him. Because the alternative was too painful. Over time, I learned to ignore the uncomfortable feeling in my chest. I convinced myself that marriage had difficult seasons. That every couple struggles. That things would eventually get better. But they didn't. They only became stranger. One evening, Ethan came home nearly 3 hours late. His shirt smelled like expensive perfume. Not mine. When I questioned him, he laughed. "Do you seriously think I'm cheating on you?" The way he said it made me feel embarrassed. Guilty. As if I had done something wrong by asking. So I apologized. And that's something I'll never forgive myself for. Months passed. The distance between us grew wider. I felt lonely even when he was sitting beside me. Then one afternoon, while grocery shopping, I saw her. Vanessa. She was standing across the parking lot. The moment our eyes met, I froze. Years earlier, Ethan had worked with her. Back then, I noticed how often her name came up in conversations. How quickly he changed the subject whenever I asked questions. I never had proof of anything. Just instincts. And instincts are easy to ignore when you're afraid of the answer. Vanessa looked at me for several seconds. Then she started walking toward me. My heart pounded. I expected anger. Defensiveness. Maybe even arrogance. Instead, she stopped a few feet away and quietly said, "We need to talk." 3 words. 3 simple words. Yet somehow, they felt heavier than anything I had heard in years. I almost walked away. But something in her expression stopped me. She didn't look proud. She looked exhausted. And what she told me next would change everything. We met at a small coffee shop later that evening. The entire drive there, I kept telling myself she was lying. That whatever she planned to say couldn't possibly be true. But the moment she sat across from me, I saw tears in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said softly. Those words instantly made my stomach twist. Then she began explaining. Years ago, while working together, she and Ethan had become close. Too close. What started as friendship slowly turned into an emotional relationship. According to her, it lasted several months. When she discovered he was hiding important details about his marriage, she ended things. She left the company shortly afterward. I sat there completely numb. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to leave. But then she said something that shocked me even more. That wasn't the end. Apparently, Ethan had continued contacting her for years. Not because they were together. Because he needed someone to constantly validate him. Whenever we argued, he called her. Whenever life became difficult, he complained about me to her. Whenever he wanted sympathy, he created stories that made him look like the victim. And she had finally become tired of it. I realized he wasn't honest with either of us. Those words hit harder than anything else. Not because another woman existed. but because the man I trusted had spent years creating different versions of reality for different people. I wasn't living in a marriage. I was living inside a carefully managed illusion. Then Vanessa handed me something. A folder. Inside were years of messages. Emails. Screenshots. Conversations. Some were painful to read. Others were devastating. But together, they revealed a pattern. Ethan constantly manipulated situations to protect himself. He blamed everyone except himself. He twisted facts. He changed stories. And somehow, he always managed to appear innocent. For the first time in years, everything made sense. The late nights. The secrecy. The emotional distance. The endless excuses. I went home that night with tears streaming down my face. Not because I still doubted the truth. Because I finally saw it clearly. And strangely enough, clarity can hurt more than uncertainty. For days, I said nothing. I observed. I listened. I gathered my strength. Then something unexpected happened. The sadness slowly turned into determination. I stopped begging for honesty. Stopped chasing explanations. Stopped trying to save something that only I was fighting for. And that's when my real transformation began. A few weeks later, Ethan came home expecting another normal evening. Instead, he found divorce papers waiting on the dining table. Beside them sat copies of every message. Every email. Every lie. Every contradiction. For the first time in years, he had nowhere to hide. I still remember the expression on his face. Shock. Fear. Disbelief. He kept repeating the same sentence. This isn't what it looks like. Ironically, that's exactly what he had told me throughout our marriage. But now, there was nothing left to explain. The truth spoke for itself. Over the following months, the carefully crafted image he had built began falling apart. Friends discovered things he had hidden. Family members learned stories were never as he described them. People who once defended him started asking difficult questions. And suddenly, the person who controlled every narrative could no longer control the truth. I didn't need revenge in the dramatic sense. I didn't need to destroy him. Reality was already doing that on its own. The greatest revenge wasn't watching him lose his reputation. It was rebuilding my own life. I started traveling. Reconnected with old friends. Focused on my career. And slowly, I became someone I hadn't been in years. Confident. Peaceful. Free. Looking back, I sometimes think about the strange way the truth found me. Not through an investigation. Not through an argument. Not through a confession from my husband. It came from the one person I least expected. The woman I believed was my enemy. And perhaps that's the lesson I carry with me today. Sometimes the people we blame aren't the ones destroying our lives. Sometimes the real danger is the person standing closest to us, hiding behind trust. The truth may arrive late. It may arrive from unexpected places. But when it finally arrives, it gives you something incredibly valuable. The chance to stop living in someone else's story and start writing your own. And that's exactly what I did. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was finally living.